Henry, and morning everyone, and thanks for joining the call. If I just share my presentation with you, and sometimes takes me a while to kind of figure out which tab I need to press and everything. So can everyone see the presentation now on their screens?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great stuff, thank you. So just to give a bit of a background, the kind of aim of the session is to kind of educate yourselves really on how to set up and claim your apprenticeship grants through the CITB, because things have changed slightly over the last 12 to 18 months. There is a lot of information to take in. I appreciate that there is a lot now that that we're asking employers to do. But there are four main focuses for today, and that would be to look at how to set up the attendance grants, then also how to claim the achievement grants once the apprentice has completed. There will be a focus on how you authorise payments of the attendance grants, and then also we will have a quick look at the new travel to train grants that has been introduced in the last 4 or 5 months. And what I'll do is I'll stop for questions at the end of each section, because like I say, I do feel that there is a lot to take in, so there might not be things clear as I go through the presentation. So please feel free to ask questions when we kind of stop. So in terms of apprenticeship grants, from the 1st of April 2020, there was a new kind of amount of grants that we were paying, and the rates are shown there in the table. So you're able to claim £2,500 attendance grant per academic year. That is paid in quarterly instalments of £625 every 3 months or every 13 weeks, basically. So, you know, if you've got someone doing a 2-year course, there's £5,000 worth of attendance grants over the 2 years. And then at the end, if they hopefully achieve the qualification, you are able to claim a £3,500 achievement grant as well. If a learner then progresses onto a 3rd year or a level 3 course, there is a further £2,500 for that 3rd year attendance. And then you're also as well able to claim a further £3,500 achievement grant at the end of a level 3. They're more kind of for your biblical trades, like your plastering, your joinery, or your bricklaying type of stuff. I'm not 100% sure whether the scaffolding goes into kind of like a 3rd year. So just to bear that in mind. So what do we pay grants for? So we pay grants for the attendance and achievements on approved apprenticeships in Wales, England and Scotland, and they all do work slightly different. So this is just a kind of an overview in general of how it works. The grant for apprenticeship obviously covers the off-the-job attendance with an approved apprenticeship provider, and then also, you know, the achievement at the end, as you know, hopefully all of them achieve their qualifications. So there's 2 aspects, as I mentioned, to it, the attendance and the achievements. Some important information for you as employers to be aware of. In order to be eligible to claim the CITB grants for apprentices, you must use an approved apprenticeship provider that has direct contact with obviously the Welsh Government, the Register of Apprenticeship Training Providers in England, or the Scottish Qualification Authority. There is a list on the CITB website of who is an approved provider. So, you know, if you did want to look, if the provider you're going to use is on the approved list, there is a list there on the website. The attendance grant is payable up to the apprentice's last date in learning, up to a maximum of 2 years. So if someone completes before 2 years, if you like, it's kind of the attendance grant is paid pro rata up to the last day in learning. You can apply for grants for directly employed individuals only, so pay-as-you-earn staff. And then employers who are newly registered with CITB during the grant scheme year may apply for apprenticeship grants for the 12-month period prior to the employer's registration date, and all of the grants from the date of registration. So basically what that means is if an employer registered with the CITB in January 2021, for example, but they'd had an apprentice since September 2020, we are able to backdate grants for apprentices for up to 12 months before they're registered with us. But all of the grants kick in once they're registered. So things like your short duration training and stuff is from the dates the employer registered. But with apprenticeships, we can backdate that up to 12 months prior. Okay, so attendance grants is payable up to the apprentice's last date in learning, again, up to a 2-year maximum. The attendance grant rate starts from the 1st of April is £2,500 per year, as I previously said, and then also the achievement grant is £3,500 on successful completion of the apprenticeship. Attendance grants and achievement grants are applied for separately, and this is what I'm going to go through in the presentation today to show you what claim forms you have to complete. Not ideal really that you have to claim for them separately, because some employers, once they've had the attendance grant set up, think that the achievement grants will come through automatically as well, but you do have to kind of claim that separately. If an apprentice changes employer during the apprenticeship, the attendance and achievement grants will be paid pro rata according to the employment dates with each employer, rather than the percentage of the qualification they've done with an employer. So you could end up having an apprentice do 80% of the qualification with one employer and then 20% with someone else. However, we only pay grants on the kind of like the dates that they're with the employer, which is, you could say slightly unfair, but that's the way they've kind of come up with it. And you will be eligible for attendance grants once your apprentice has completed 13 weeks of continuous contracted employment. So basically the achievement grant doesn't kick in until the apprentice has done 13 continuous weeks of employment with yourselves as the employer. So that's a bit of a snapshot overview of the grants. Does anyone have any questions up to that point?
Good morning, Stuart to go here. Just a daft question. Initially, how do we about trying to get apprentices? I've had no joy up in the kind of Glasgow area trying to get in contact with anybody. I spoke with Alistair and May at my recent NASC audit. He was under the belief to speak with maybe Pamela Harkness up here. Would that be the case to see whereabouts we go? Because generally I try to do like minimum of 3 guys you start in the yards on a 3-month basis, put them through their cots so much, so on and so forth, get them a labourers card. So we've kind of been doing that year on year, but the actual apprenticeships seem very few and far between. What's the way to go about it?
It's a difficult one to answer, because I think in general terms, people are struggling to find apprentices, not through scaffolding, but just in construction in general. Mm-hmm. And finding, people of the correct calibre that will stick it out. There are kind of schemes, locally to where I'm based that, employees can tap into, but I found that a lot of them say it's word of mouth that works best for them, rather than going through, a recruitment process where they might advertise with someone like Indeed or with the career service locally, the job centres and stuff. So it is a really difficult question to answer, and I suppose I don't really have an answer for you, really. I know you've done a lot with the Kickstart scheme, haven't you, Henry?
Yes, we have. In point of fact, we recognise Stuart's particular challenges, which isn't to say that recruitment of apprenticeships hasn't been quite challenging, really dependent upon where you are in the country. But we know that there's a particular challenge in Scotland, and one of the things we're looking at is trying to identify specialist apprenticeship brokerages. We do have a fair number of them south of the border, but I have to be honest, at this stage, I'm not entirely sure what the sort of database of brokerage providers is in Scotland. What has been evident from the Kickstart program, the Kickstart scheme, is that a significant number of the members who applied to be on Kickstart applied to do so on the basis that all of their Kickstarters would be pre-apprenticeships. Now, what that's served to do is giving them a little bit of leeway in order to explore the various options and the kind of provision that might be available, but at the same time giving them a better understanding as to whether the person is of the right stuff to put onto an apprenticeship, because just because they may be competent doesn't necessarily mean they have the aptitude or the patience, or for that matter, the desire to complete an apprenticeship. So the Kickstart scheme has almost served as a kind of 6-month trial period for employers to assess whether they think candidates are viable for apprenticeships. But I appreciate that doesn't really help address Stuart's problem in the short term. What I'd ask Stuart to do is contact me after the meeting, and let's look at a specific strategy that we might be able to employ to try and support you with this. Because I have got a range of contacts up and down the country, but as Alad's already intimated, it's more or less impossible to try and identify a one-size-fits-all solution, because a number of the challenges are very, very regional. So I know, for example, even within London, in East London, it's a bit easier to identify apprenticeships than it is in North London for a couple of reasons within specific trades. And then when you look at certain other sectors, they are awash with apprenticeship opportunities. So there's a job of work to do for the co-financing agencies like the Institute for Apprenticeships and the National Apprenticeship Service to sort of do a bit more coordination and support us through this. But while we're on our own and ploughing ahead, I think there are potential solutions, but they have to be bespoke. So, Stuart, if you care to have a chat with me afterwards, we'll look at what we can do to try and improve your apprenticeship recruitment.
No, we can do that, Henry. That's fine. I say, if need be, I'll contact Pamela. Just you can get her in for a visit just to see if she's got anything out there. I say we've tried over the years with different organisations try to help underprivileged, and it always comes back and bites you. And you never really seem to get a full completion on them. So yeah, I'll do that, Henry. That'd be great. Thanks very much.
No problem at all.
What I can do as well is I can ask someone from the Scotland team if they've got any schemes running, because I know for myself, based in Wales, we've got a couple of things that, well, 3 things that we're doing to try and kind of resolve the issue around this. One is to a project we call See Your Site. So we're taking level 1 learners out onto a construction site very early in their studies, so they get a proper feel of what it's like to be on a construction site. We will also be doing the same with careers advisors and representatives from the job centres, because I think a lack of knowledge about the opportunities within construction industry could be an issue as well, where they don't give the appropriate careers advice in schools and so on about the opportunities within construction. And then the other one that we're piloting, or we'll look to pilot next year, is what we call a traineeship, where we kind of, it's like a bridging course, if you like, between a level 1 course and an apprenticeship. And that is specific for site carpentry, but if it proves to be successful, we will look to roll it out to more industries, and scaffolding could be a possible option. So I'll check with the Scotland team to see if they've got anything along those lines that way, and let Henry know if that's okay.
That sounds like a plan. I'm sure Stuart's in agreement with that one. Daniel, you got a question?
Yeah, Dave. I was going to drop you a line about this later on, actually, Henry, but I thought it's kind of relevant to what we're talking about just now.
Sure.
I was keen to get involved with the Kickstart scheme as well, and you helped me out with the kind of application process and stuff like that.
Yes.
Now, I don't know, will applicants come back kind of gradually, or will there be like a selection of people that have applied to come back once the scheme once the advert's kind of expired? Because we actually haven't had anything back yet. I don't know if it's just the fact there's been no interest, or if they're just not ready for review yet.
Yeah, this is unfortunately again something that is regional, because it's really contingent upon the effectiveness of a local job centre to make the referrals. But Aled has actually touched on a very, very crucial point, which actually ties in quite well with the situation you're describing, Dan. The reality is that careers professionals, And by and large, educators of all shapes and sizes, whether in the further education sector or even work-based learning and vocational training, are very ignorant indeed about construction as a whole, and particularly ignorant about scaffolding. So one of the things that we've been doing, particularly to try and ensure that the nature of the referrals from the Kickstart scheme to our members improves, is to work with the department and do presentations called Meet the Gateway, i.e. the NASC being the gateway umbrella organisation that is the guardian of the Kickstart sort of administration, so that we can present to them what the scaffolding industry is about, but more particularly what NASC scaffolders are about. Because it's proven time and time again that when there is a local relationship between employers and job centres, the quality of referrals that you get for any of the positions that you advertise, this is irrespective of Kickstart or not, if you have a local relationship, I can guarantee you that the quality of the candidates that you get improves exponentially. And it's simply because it's that classic axiom of we buy from who we like. And job centres, I know that they don't really encourage a lot of sympathy, but those poor sods who are working at the coalface, the works coaches, have got 20 minutes to see people every 2 weeks, including the Kickstarters, find out what they've been doing for the previous 2 weeks, to assess whether they have transgressed any of the requirements so that they can be sanctioned if necessary, which is one of the priorities of the job centres. And then they've got to try and figure out whether there's any benefit issues they have before they even consider whether they're going to match them to an appropriate vacancy. So you can imagine within 2 weeks, it's a lot to cram in. And if I'm being honest, you tend to find that what they're doing is they're sort of skim reading the vacancy templates that you all have taken the time to sort of populate. And therefore, we're not getting the appropriate matches.
Sure.
As Alan will attest, and as a number of people who are here can attest, I have thrown my toys out the pram numerous times with the DWP. So the benefit of that is that when I do complain about a very specific situation, as I will do with yours, Dan, and we'll have a chat afterwards, things change and they do improve. It's just not acceptable that you haven't had any referrals up to this point, but it's even more unacceptable that nobody has contacted you, because that should be happening as a given. Because the number one priority for the new Director General of the Department for Work and Pensions is for employers to be on site, to be invited to local job centres. That is the number one target of every local job centre. So just as an aside, if there are any members who would like to arrange such a visit to talk about the provision that they have, the opportunities that they have, because this isn't the last time we're going to need to recruit. It's not the last time we're going to need apprentices. And at the end of this scheme, we're still going to need people. So I am more than happy to attend on your behalf or with you, which would probably be better so that you can create that relationship in order to ensure that we have longer term access to candidates and that we're not just seemingly the only industry that is completely reliant on word of mouth for our referrals, because we've got a great industry and they just don't know about it.
Sure.
Sorry, Lydia.
Yeah. I was just, me and you worked together, haven't we, Henry? And I went from having no referrals to then having 20 a week. And it just really is about ringing up your local job centre, getting a relationship. I've got a relationship now with the lady that I'm working with down the road, and she's recruiting people for me. So, yeah, that I'll just say that it does work. I've got 6 on now, and you just, when you've got that relationship, they just come through constantly. So Henry, give him a kick up the bum, and yeah. I've got loads now. I'm turning them down.
Make sure you talk to Henry.
Sorry, I'm quite aware that we kind of hijacked that conversation.
No, it's fine. It kind of takes us nicely to the next part, basically. So hopefully, when you found an apprentice, how you kind of set up your attendance grant is kind of the next section we're going to look at. So obviously, with all CITB grants, you can apply if you're levy registered and that you're up to date with your levy return. So So that's the important point there is, CITB work on a view that no levy, no grant. So if you haven't submitted your levy return, you're not eligible for grants. So you need to get the levy return submitted before the kind of deadlines. Then there is an application form on the CITB website that you need to download. And I've got a copy. I'll kind of show it quickly in a minute now. And then on that application, you must provide evidence from your college or the training provider that your apprentice is registered onto an approved apprenticeship program. So in terms of evidence, what you need to get from the provider on either headed paper or on their email address for them to send you an email with its details. And basically what it needs to contain is the full name of the apprentice, the full apprenticeship standard, course title and level that apprentice is undertaking, and the apprenticeship start date with the college or the training provider. So that's the kind of evidence they need when you fill in the application form. You then need to send in that application form to customer services ynet@citb.co.uk. And as long as we receive the paperwork within 20 weeks of the start date of the apprenticeship, they will begin making grant payments backdated to the start of the actual course. If you submit after an initial 20 weeks of the start date of the course, CITB will only start to pay the grants from the date they receive the application form. So in short, there's a 20-week rule. So you need to submit your claim form within 20 weeks of the course starting if you want to get the full grant. If you fail to do that, you will only receive grants from the date CITB receive the application form. So that's an important point there. So if I can try and show you here. Can everyone see that application form there now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the form that you need to complete to get the application, the attendance grant set up. So employer details, you put your company details in there. You sign the declaration at the bottom, and then on the apprenticeship details tab, you would then put in the details of the course that the learner is doing. So the title of the apprenticeship framework and standard, you can get that from the provider. You put in what level they're doing, what the start date of the apprenticeship is, what the expected end date is. And again, that is something that you can get from the provider. You put in the college name or the training provider, postcode, tick the box saying you're including the evidence, like I say, a copy of an email with all the details, expected number of days attendance at college per year. Again, that's something that the provider can give to you, and then it's basic details of the learner then. And that's the form to complete to get the attendance grant sent up. And then you send that to, like I say, the email address, to the customer service ynet email address there. So that's to get the attendance grant set up. Has anyone got any questions around that?
Again, Al, could you send out the content of this after this seminar?
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll send Henry a copy of the presentation. I'll also attach copies of the claim forms and everything that I'm talking about. And then if anyone's got any further questions about filling them, I'm happy for yourself to come to me, or you've got your local CITB advisors in the area that you can go to for assistance with this type of stuff.
Thank you.
Any more questions around the attendance grant and how to set that up? No. Okay.
So, Aled,
yeah.
I don't know if this is a really stupid question, which knowing me, it possibly is. But if there's any breaks in attendance, say a candidate's ill for a period of time or whatever, how does that impact, or does it impact at all, how you would apply for attendance grants?
So do you mean in a sense where if they were on long-term sickness and the qualification was put on hold, or?
Yeah.
I suppose we'd have to look at that on an individual basis. It would be a conversation we would need to have with the grants team and just advise them, listen, this person's on long-term sickness. They're their qualification has been put on hold. So I would imagine what would happen is we would put postponements on the grant payments, because on the next section I'm going to come to, I'm going to show how to kind of advise how you authorize the grant payments, because again, that is something that the employer has to do. So if I just go on to that there, Henry, but yeah,
Thanks.
I think if that was, we'd have to look at that on an individual case. I wouldn't imagine it's never happened before. So from what I would imagine would happen is we would put a pause on the grant payments until the learner is back onto the course.
Yeah, so I've still got COVID on the brain, you see, so
yeah.
Just trying to think ahead.
Okay, so once your attendance grant is set up, so you've submitted the claim form, the grant payments are set up for you, and once you've submitted the grant claim form, the grant payments are then set up for the whole 2 years. So it's just that one form to get the grant payment set up for the 2 years. Okay, as I mentioned earlier as well, it is paid on a quarterly basis, so every 13 weeks. So what would happen is CITB would send you an application form in the post or an email notification every 13 weeks to confirm, to ask you to confirm that your apprentice is still with you and still in training. So you authorize the payment that way. You have to confirm this within 3 months of the issue date to be able to continue to receive the payments. So once you get that notification or you get the form through the post, you've got 3 months to kind of get it signed and authorized and sent back to CITB. If the apprentice leaves your employment, you must notify us as CITB, and what we will do then, we will pay the attendance grant up to the date your apprentice has left you. Okay, so if they do leave within the 2 years, you would notify CITB that they've left, and we would pay you pro rata for the grant up until their leaving date. What we are suggesting now is that all employers set up a CITB online account in order to authorize the apprenticeship grants, because we have found in the old way of working, when forms were sent out, things get lost in the post. We haven't received the form to kind of claim and so on and so forth. So now, because we've got the online accounts, that's the way we're asking employers to go. So if you've got an online account set up, you would get an email through to say there's a grant waiting in your CITB online account to be authorized. You then just log in and you authorize the payments online. And we've got a guide of how you go about authorizing the payments. And I'll pass these on to Henry after the session. But I can show you quickly what it looks like. If we go here. So this is where you go to kind of get a CITB online account set up. Can everyone see that page there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the CITB online account, and basically what you'd have to do is you have to sign in. Obviously, you click on the grant tab. That will take you to another page, and there's an option there to kind of authorize a grant payment. And what we have is we have a guide. This basically just talks you through what you have to do. So like I say, you click on the grants, go into authorize grant payments. The grant that needs to be authorized would be there. You just basically need to click on it. And then you just have to confirm whether the employee is still in employment with you, and you click submit. So there's a guide there. So it's quite straightforward to do, to be honest. So if anyone hasn't got one of these CITB online accounts set up, I'm happy to give you a hand to get that set up. It's basically an application form on the CITB website, just asking for basic details. So yeah, so that is how you'd authorize the attendance grants once it's set up. So does anyone have any questions around that side of things? No? Okay. Happy to move on. So next we'll have a look at how to claim your apprenticeship achievement grant. So obviously we've looked at getting your attendance grant set up for the 2 years that are on the course. You then authorize that payment every quarter, as long as the apprentice is still with you, obviously. And then at the end of the 2 years, or at the end of the apprenticeship, hopefully when they've achieved, you then have to put a separate claim in for the achievement grants. So the important notes there is to remember the achievement grants are applied for separately to the attendance grants. Again, you can apply if you're levy registered with CITB and up to date with your levy returns. That's why I've got to emphasize the importance of getting your levy returns submitted, because that's what makes you eligible for grants. For achievements awarded between the 1st of April and 31st of March, you download the apprenticeship achievement grants and fill that in, and I'll show that to you again in a minute. And then you submit it to grant.claimforms@citb.co.uk with a copy of the achievement certificate or an achievement notification from the awarding body. So that's your kind of evidence this time around. So it's a copy of the certificate that you submit with the application form as evidence. Okay, and then that application form does look slightly different. So again, at the bottom, you complete the employer details tab, basic details. You sign the declaration again, but this time you need to go onto the apprenticeship achievement tab. And then again, it's the same principle. You put in the framework, the level, the achievement date. You kind of tick the box to say you're including a copy of evidence, and then the learner's details here. Complete that, and then you submit to grant.claimforms@citb.co.uk. So any questions around submitting a claim for an achievement grant? No, and just to go back what I mentioned right at the start of the presentation, we do find not just with scaffolding companies, but with companies in general, is they forget to claim this achievement grant because they've kind of got the attendance grant set up and they've been paid that over the 2 years. They forget that there's this achievement grant at the end as well. So we do try and kind of remind employers, you know, as we go along, don't forget to claim that achievement grant at the end. So yeah, so that's an important one to remember, that you claim the achievement grant separately once the learner has achieved. And again, that 20-week rule does stand here as well. So you need to claim that grant within 20 weeks of the achievement date. Okay, and then finally, just to touch on this one is a new grant that CITB have introduced in the last few months, and it was something that someone mentioned on the training group meeting we had. I think it was Henry, that they've been asking for this for years. Well, it's basically an apprenticeship. It's a grant if someone has to travel to train. So I know with scaffolding, you know, you're limited in terms of where you can go to do the apprenticeships, and sometimes there is a need to kind of travel and stay over. So this has been introduced now for you to access. So it's widening its support for employees with apprentices who have to travel to train. We will contribute 80% of accommodation costs for apprentices that have to stay away for block training. The employer will be required to pay 20% of the total cost. And then also they will provide a grant for travel claims if someone's travel costs exceed £30 per week. And it's only the amount over that £30 a week that CITB will pay for. But it is something new that's been introduced in the last few months. I haven't got more information than that. If you do need more info, that's the email address to go to. The little caveat with this is that you would have to use accommodation that's on kind of CITB's approved list, if you like, because they've been able to kind of get some discounts and stuff. So if you go off and book your own place, for example, and then try to claim the grants, they won't pay it. So you have to kind of go through CITB's approved list. But for more info, that's the place to go, the apprenticeship accommodation.travel support at citb.co.uk website. I haven't been given any more information about that grant. There is due to come out a kind of like a flow chart of what you have to do to be able to access that grant. And again, once I have that, I will forward it on to Henry. I have also put together a bit of a flow chart for the YNET grants as well, but I'm just waiting for that to be signed off by our central team to say it's okay for me to share with employers. So it kind of like a step-by-step guide of what you need to do to get your apprenticeship grant set up. It just summarizes what I've kind of gone through in this presentation, really. So does anyone have any questions around the travel and accommodation funding there then?
It sounds like that would be more like a kind of an AIS. So I was sending guys to Glasgow, say down to AIS, Newcastle, kind of that kind of sounds that kind of idea, maybe.
Yeah. To use the example in Wales, we've got a training centre in Swansea, but I'm based in Anglesey, so if you wanted to send a learner to Swansea, it's probably about a 5-hour travel, and they do block release there, where I think they're there for 2 weeks. So this is the type of thing that you could access to help towards the costs of sending them down to Swansea. Similar in the past, you know, they used to send them to Birmingham. So again, this grant is towards that type of thing as well. And that's it in terms of the presentation. So as I say, we've kind of looked at how to kind of get the attendance grants set up, then how you authorize the attendance grants every quarter, how to claim the achievement grants at the end of the apprenticeship, and then also just touched on the new travel to train grant there. So they're the 4 main focuses for today. Happy to take questions about anything there or anything CITB related if anyone's got any questions. Just
if there aren't any questions, I know we're all busy people. Please feel free to send through any questions that may sort of suddenly come to you in a moment of clarity once the meeting's ended. And I can ensure that Aled has access to them. Aled's also open, as he's pointed out, to being contacted directly, or alternatively, using your local CITB providers. There's a question, is there a copy of this PowerPoint that we can download? I believe Aled is going to be sharing that with me afterwards. Yep. So that will be something that I'll obviously send on to you as soon as Aled's provided it. And as I mentioned just before, pretty much just before Aled started speaking, that I am recording this presentation as well, and I'll be sharing that by the end of this week.
I think maybe, definitely.
Yeah, and I am aware, Henry, like I said at the start, it's a lot of information to take in, and you know, it does seem like we're asking employers to do a lot to get these set up. And you know how, you know, we never make things easy for employers, but this is the process at the moment. So yeah, if anyone kind of, once I send the presentation through, and if anyone has a look and kind of think, I don't really remember what I need to do with that, or just feel free to give me a shout. Or, you know, if you've lost contact with your local advisor, let myself and Henry know, and then we can kind of dig out who is your local advisor and ask them to make contact with yourself, you know, and they'd be quite happy to go through this and the skills and training funding and all the other grants that you can access, or the support you can access. So yeah, feel free to let us know.
Excellent. One final thing that I'll add to this is that we will be running another one of these next Tuesday, as I'm sure most of you know. So if you have colleagues within your organisation who you think could benefit from attending, then by all means, just let me know. I'll make sure that they have access to the link for next week's meeting. And if that's all, then thank you so much for your attendance. Thanks for your input as well. The questions have been really, really useful. It helps to tease out some of the things that we have obviously been pontificating about and trying to figure out the best solution in order to provide you with support. And I will be speaking to Stuart and Dan pretty much soon after this. Yeah, so feel free, any of you, to contact me if you've got any questions. relating to training, and I'll speak to you soon. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Same yourselves.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for
Bye
that.
bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank
See you
you.
later.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.